I think an ongoing issue of debate is whether or not the administration is or is not encouraging industry to produce oil and gas. And this has all the implications at the gas pump that the mom sitting at home who can't afford her gas and she can't afford an electric vehicle, or her pickup truck is 15 years old, she's frustrated and she would like to have answers. So with that, I approach this conversation. And we know that if the administration sent signals, you rightly say that you can't turn on production like that, but if the administration sent signals now that there was going to be increased production, futures prices would fall. There's an inverse correlation between supply and price, and if investors are assured about future supply, then price can have a downward pressure now. So all this is beyond finger pointing. It is reality as to the implications for that mom sitting at home, unable to afford a nice new electric car. So with that said, I think it's important to note that you've mentioned some oil companies saying that government regulation is not an issue. But I think it's important to say that the independent producers feel as if it is. And the IPAA, their members, produce 80% of the oil that is consumed in our nation. They sent a letter dated March 18th to the president, in which they say specifically government actions are chilling the ability of them to produce. My colleague from Nevada rightly points out there's a lot of leases out there. The folks from the IPAA who make 80% of the wells, so 80% of the oil, say that leases are ineffective without a permit, and that the amount of permitting that has been allowed in 2022 has dramatically fallen off from the permits in 2021. They also point out that there's a big pressure, rightly so, a big pressure to limit methane release when they associated gas when they are producing. But if you're going to limit methane release, you have to have the permits for the gathering pipelines in order to capture that methane. And those permits, as we've discussed before, have been incredibly hard to come by. So on the one hand, don't produce the methane, but on the other hand, we're not going to give you the permit to have the pipeline to gather the methane so that it can be shipped elsewhere. But if you release that methane, we've got a rule we're about to club you with. Now, I think everything I'm saying is frankly indisputable. I can show you the regulations that have had a chilling effect upon the financing of these projects. And it can be the Department of Labor rule, reversing a Trump administration rule as regards the rule of the ability of investor funds to use ESG as a criteria by whom to fund. This administration's Department of Labor is allowing ESG to play the role, which is chilling the financing. It can be this SEC rule, which is telling the companies you've got to come up with your upstream and downstream emissions profile so that investor community should take this into account. I mean, how I use my gasoline is going to impact how one of these publicly held independents is going to be viewed by the investor community. That is this administration's rule. 3 Democrats voted for it, 1 Republican voted against it. And so as you speak of the financing mechanism, clearly financing is having a role here, and the administration is enabling financing to be inhibited. There was some progress where the Ex-Im banks said they'd begin to do domestic production. The Make More in America initiative. It was approved by the board on April 14th. But it's on renewables, energy storage, semiconductors, biotech. There's nothing about fossil. Now, we're now in a scenario where if the Chinese decide to help fund one of these projects that otherwise cannot get funding because of everything I've just described, they can buy our natural gas at Henry Hub and sell it on the open market 3 to 4 times the price because we can't get domestic financing. And that's a plausible scenario. I think the reason that we're so frustrated is that if you look at the reality, the context of this administration's attitude towards fossil, you've killed financing. I hate to be accusatory, but talk to the IPAA. Those folks can't get the financing they once did. If the administration, on the other hand, going back to my original point, sends the signal that over the next year and the next 3 years, we're going to do our best to help financing. You're going to put a downward pressure on that price. And that mom will be able to spend some of her disposable income on a night out to movies with her husband, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I got to fill up my 15-year-old pickup truck, and I sure wish I could afford an electric vehicle, but that is beyond my means because I'm paying everything for higher prices. And I don't usually spend my whole time venting. I apologize. But I feel like there has to be some context to these valid points. But when you look at the dadgum reality, Department of Labor, SEC, FERC, doing everything they can, BOEM, everything they can to kill domestic production. Financial markets have picked up on it, and so these folks can't get capital, and that was their complaint. I apologize for spending my whole time complaining, but I just felt like there had to be some context.